Okay, we are live. Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you today to join me for this live chat. I'm super stoked. How are you today?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Phoebe. Really good. How are you?
Busy. I'm busy. I've dropped the baby off at the mother-in-law. I've got a limited amount of time to record this, so I'm really like, when you've got so much on, you're like fizzing to do it. I'm probably going to burn out later. Probably just going to have a crash and be like asleep by 8 p.m. So love that for me.
Yeah,
So
too.
tell us a little bit about like who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I describe myself as a female health nutritionist. I've been through master's degree training in human nutrition, so it's very science based, lots of biochemistry, lots of physiology, um, all factions of it really, how it impacts with disease and stuff like this. Yeah, so I did that a few years ago now. I think I started in 2017. Um, and yeah, and I think since doing that, I had a lot of a lot of stuff come out the woodwork, a lot of imposter syndrome and feelings of inadequacy, and a lot of not feeling good enough. So then that kind of, I think, lockdown hit, and that spurred me on to really go inward and take this time away from the world in order to sort of go inside, yeah, and really process a lot of my stuff, process and integrate a lot of my shadow.
So
So
Emily, everybody is saying that what she's done is a lot of inner work, and
an awful
well
lot of
done,
inner
Emily.
work. It's taken a lot for me to even be sat here, just in front of a webcam and talking about what I do and having the confidence to do that.
Well,
So yeah,
you are a natural, and you look fantastic, if I might say. The off the shoulder Bardo thing is really giving it to me with the spore print kind of vibe as well. I'm loving it. So imposter syndrome, be gone.
yes, yeah, yeah. These are my power shoulders.
I love it. I love it. I've got
Something
power shoulders too. Look, mine have got these go faster stripes down them. Look.
kappa slapper.
Yeah, literally. I bought this. My mother-in-law got me like a Topshop voucher for Christmas when I just started dating her son. I looked through all the Topshop clothes. I was like, these are fucking shit. Went on Top Man, which interestingly is an anagram of tampon. Went on Top Man, and then this Kappa jumper was on Top Man, and I was like, well, I'll fucking
Brilliant.
have that then. Awesome, done. Sorry, back to you.
Right, okay. So yeah, so a lot of inner work. It really started connecting to my womb. Um, Me and her were definitely at odds for a very long time. I think my whole menstruating life had been very difficult for me. You know, we weren't really taught. Well, some are, the lucky ones are, but it certainly wasn't in my family at the time. It was like, okay, there's your period, here's a pad, it's a bit shit, go and get on with it. There was no ceremony, there was no education, there was nothing about it apart from it's going to be a bit shit. So yeah, and that's the experience that I had. It was pretty shit. I didn't know anything about cyclical living. I had massive mood swings around my period, and I would not go into school. Like, I would really try and stay out of school on those days. I think it really impacted my relationship with my dad as well, because no one knew what was going on or how to deal with it, and I was, quite a disillusioned teenager going through the roller coaster of a menstrual cycle with
Mm.
no information. Um, so yeah, and it wasn't until lockdown started. So where were we now? Like 2019. And since that first connection, my life has shifted dramatically. I was it brought me back to nourishing my body properly. It brought me back to myself. It
Because
brought
am I correct? You were vegan.
I was for 5 years.
I was
So when,
vegan for 10 years, and I think both of us have a similar sort of a similar experience in that you go vegan thinking it's the right thing for you and it's the right thing for the environment, and then learning more about how your body actually works, you sort of think to yourself, oh shit, I think I do need ancestral nourishment. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've magnetized myself so much to your message, what you present on through your social media profiles, because I can fucking relate. It's just I've always wanted to do what's best for me and what's best for, you know, the wider sort of not just society in terms of people, but you know, all of the, I just want love, man. I just want love. And then I found that it was so easy. I felt I was kind of hoodwinked by veganism, saying, this is love. Veganism is love. And it's the way to have this kind of Buddhist approach to never harming anybody ever again. But what I was harming, obviously, is my sort of my descendants' access to nourishment, you know, starting with my own, if you see what I mean. It's been quite a steep learning curve. But tell me more about your transition from veganism to a more, what would you say, like an ancestral diet?
Yeah, definitely ancestrally, and ancestral in the term ancestral and local, you know, as to where I live. So I think when I was in, there was two very opposing camps when I was doing my nutritional masters. There was the kind of the emerging science, what's coming out now, and epidemiology, and all these trends that are being pushed forward. And it was, at the time, it was very plant-based is much better, red meat causes colon cancer. This is the kind of messages that we were getting from one side of the nutritional training that we were getting. The other side of it, the biochemistry and the physiology, the more experiential evidence that is available, and the experimental evidence that is available, you know, where we're really actually able to go into biological models and run things and test how that goes, as opposed to observational studies. And observational studies, there is a huge amount of bias with them, and also a lot of confounding factors that can't all physically be accounted for. Like, and also there was a big meta-analysis that came out to do with processed food around the time, but the processed food, so it was lumping like tins of tuna in with like heavily processed like McDonald's fast food. So there was no good clear separation of between highly processed food and minimally processed food that is beneficial to us. So
I saw this like an infographic the other day. Sorry. No, I saw an infographic the other day that basically said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter what you eat, it's more about what you don't eat. It's like there's so much food out there that is not actually food. And then
yes.
it basically, it doesn't matter whether you are, you know, veggie or pescatarian or, you know, a fucking like keto or whatever. But if you can avoid these like the really, really bad shit, you're probably going to have an all right time of it. Is there some element of truth to that?
I don't think so, no. I think it does really matter what you eat. We are very removed from our ancestral diet now, organs being the key component that we don't sort of allow that in anymore. A lot of us are very squeamish with it. We don't know what to do with it. We don't like the taste of it anymore. But that was so integral to our diet ancestrally. So I really disagree with that. I think that ketone diet, vegetarian diets, and vegan diets can be really damaging. And even if you aren't eating the crap, let's say if you've got a very healthy vegan diet, that you're not eating any processed food, you are still missing massively large key components to your nourishment. So yeah, I mean, there's other things out there that I've read that says, there was a study on rabbits, for instance, and I mean, again, I don't really know, because how much does a rabbit actually really like being touched by a human? I don't know. But the point of the study was that there was rabbits eating a bad diet and rabbits eating a good diet, and the rabbits were receiving like love and strokes and like good thoughts as they were eating the shit diet, and the shit diet didn't affect them like it would have done had they not received that like love and care. So Yeah, I mean, there's so much to it. We know that there's diet isn't just about what you're actually putting in your body and what you are eating. It's also about your mental state and your stress levels, which change your ability to digest the food that you are eating.
Mm.
So coming back to full circle with what I do, this is what
Yes.
I try to incorporate into my practice. So I don't just focus on nutrition. There's so much more to it. So, you can be eating the best food possible, but if you're not moving, if you're not going outside, if you've got a lot of inner conflict going on, if the quality of your relationships isn't very good, if the quality of your relationship with your own womb isn't very good, then there's a lot of disconnect that can still be happening. So
Mm.
really, health and nourishment and well-being is all about, it's a balancing act between all of these things, basically.
And
And
I think this is why I've been so attracted to your ethos and your message, is because it clearly comes from a place of loving care, and it's that sort of, I think what you're trying to do, Emily, is to try to obviously like gently educate people about how they can nourish themselves and how they can be kinder to themselves. And I imagine the only reason you're doing that is because you genuinely love and care people for people. Do you know what I mean? Like I really love that about you, and I think that's why it's so easy to magnetize towards you. Like I really love you, and I think you're fantastic, and I really believe in your message. So thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, mainly around like nutrition, which obviously is your kind of your strong suit, but also about like the what I've tried to do with the Path of the Melissy is I've tried to sort of build a compendium of the ways that the honeybee hive interacts with the essence of the divine feminine. And I think for as a species that's put all of its metaphorical eggs in the basket of the divine feminine, um, there's there's so much that we can sort of learn by watching their example, and something that bees do believe very staunchly in, and something that has really fed their evolutionary traits over the last few thousand years, is early nutrition. Because obviously with honeybees, the worker and the queen are from the same type of egg, if you see what I mean. They're from a fertilized egg, which I touch on in one of the ebook modules. But they are fed differently. So bees who are to become a queen have a super high protein, incredibly mineral dense substance, royal jelly. They're fed, they're crammed with royal jelly as much as they can sort of tolerate. And that then sets this chain of events into them basically becoming fertile, becoming this reproductive engine, becoming this sort of powerhouse of managing the mood of the entire colony on a second by second basis through chemistry. And the workers just aren't able to do that. So what is it about early nutrition that has the power to sort of send these, obviously, social insects and humans aren't directly comparable, but there's got to be something in it, right? Early nutrition is important.
of course, yeah. So um right. So with early nutrition, well, let's come to genetics. So
Mm,
the genetic information that is passed on from parent to child, there was a time when we thought that was our genetics are our fate kind of thing, let's say. So if we had certain genetic markers that made us more prone to a certain disease, then that meant that we were going to get it. We know now through epigenetics that that isn't the case. So we
mm,
have our genetics, but then our genetics, certain genes are able to be turned on or off depending on how we are interacting with our wider environment.
yeah.
And comes to not only like the wider environment, but the information or the food that you're putting in your body. Food is information. So
Mm,
eating seasonally prepares you for the next season prepares your body for the next season that comes along. There is
mm,
literal information in the food that you are eating through light codes. So it comes from what time of year was that food produced, what kind of light messages and information have gone into that food or stored in that food, and then we're able to utilize that. So early nutrition, it's how early are we talking? So we know that so we spoke about the Barker hypothesis before, and the Barker hypothesis is a hypothesis, but it is a widely accepted hypothesis because there is so much evidence out there that supports it. So the Barker hypothesis is around how our genes or how our nutrition is passed on from mother to child. So we thought that epigenetic markers were kind of wiped clean in producing another life form, but again, that isn't the case. Epigenetic markers can be inherited, and again, this is a piece of information that has been passed from mother to baby to prepare that baby for the environment they are coming out into. So then life form can respond to that environment. So again, we used to think that women were born with all of their eggs and they can't produce anymore. That isn't the case. We know that women now produce eggs later on into their life. They're not a finite resource. But even
that is a widely perpetuated misunderstanding, isn't it?
It is. So while eggs are made and you are born with them, you have the ability to produce more. However, but again, that the ability to produce more really is a survival thing, a survival mechanism, let's say. So let's say so the egg that I came from probably was grown inside of my grandmother. So what my grandfather and my grandmother were eating and doing at the time would dictate my biology. So it's intergenerationally, it gets passed down. The same with what my mother and father were doing at the time has come into me, right? But then if you think, let's say that you've not had, your grandparents or your parents hadn't been very healthy, it's like, that's their eggs, that's their lot. Like, it might not have the best genetic coding possible, so that's your lot. But really, actually, if then you change how, so let's say I had unhealthy grandparents and parents, if I then, which is essentially what happened, is I've then realized how I can change my biology and how I can change my epigenetics, or how I can make myself a more healthier being. I can then produce healthier eggs, let's say, for the next generation. So that's the link there. And then if we come back to early nutrition, so we know that you are in the utero, you are set up for the environment that your mother is in, essentially. But let's say your mother has experienced some sort of famine or starvation, that can affect your growth and development. So one of the things that the Barker hypothesis has discovered is that low birth weight babies, so if you do experience famine as a mother and then you have a low birth weight baby, the low birth weight baby can be born with less functional units of its organs. So in the kidneys, that would be the kidney filtration units called nephrons, or in the heart, it would be your the neurons that are in your heart that enable it to beat on its own without any signal from your brain. As we age, these functional units drop off. That's just a part of aging. So if you're born with less, you are more likely to experience earlier aging or more susceptibility to disease. Let's say diabetes, for instance. So in the pancreas, the functional units are the islets of Langerhans that produce insulin. And again, so that can, so you can effectively be born with less functional units. It would make you more difficult for you to release insulin, and then you could have issues with diabetes later in life.
Wow. Because so from what you've sort of explained in the last couple of minutes, it effectively, as people who are consuming food, like we all do every day, it's almost better to have like an idea of yourself as like even if you're not planning on having children, or whether you are, especially if you are, to see yourself as like a future descendant, a future ancestor. Do you know what I mean? Like what you are putting in your body and the experiences that you're having could have like great implications for your children and your grandchildren that you wouldn't even perhaps be around to perceive. Like, that is absolutely fascinating. It's absolutely nuts, because with the honeybee colony, you always you can sort of see, obviously their generations are much shorter and smaller, closer together than ours. The average lifespan of a queen is about, well, if you're a commercial bee farmer in like New Zealand or China or wherever, probably 12 months, because they just will knock them on the head. Apparently they're more fertile in the first 12 months. I think it's bullshit. The queens can be doing their job for 7+ years. If you actually manage them properly. I think it's a misconception. I'd love to know the science on why they think that queens are more fertile in their first 12 months. But what I'm saying is that it's you can see the generations closer together. So you can then see, if you go to a hive, you can open it up and you can see that some of them have stripes that are like this, and some of them have stripes that are like that. And you can see that each one has their own characteristics depending on whose sort of genetic information is in there. But then the queen's daughter, so to speak, you can then see the similarities in the way that she looks or the way that she behaves to her mother and her grandmother. There's this sort of this element of like an ancestral spiral almost, that's so much easier to perceive in animals like honeybees or whatever farmed animal that you have, than it is in humans, because our lives are so long that we rarely get to see the implications and the consequences of our own actions, if you see what I mean. It's I think I read somewhere that if the human's life is so short that you don't actually get a chance to do anything useful in it, but it's so long that then you don't get to see the implications of what you have done. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely nuts.
Yeah. So then when it moves on to okay, child is out now, it's had its experience in the utero, it's now outside in the wider world.
Yeah.
So if mother has experienced some sort of famine throughout pregnancy, then it can then affect, so if the baby has been grown in utero with the mother's wider environment being not as abundant, that it's restricted there, then the baby's metabolism will adapt to that situation. So then there can be problems with like overfeeding afterwards. And then so there can be problems with that, but also there's a balance. Like, it is really essential to make sure that that child has adequate and proper nutrition so that it can grow and develop better than it would have with less there. Essentially, we know that early nutrition contributes to stunting, wasting, cognitive decline, or cognitive difficulty. So it's, I mean, I work in schools as well, so I mean, and there's a lot of problem with like nutrition in schools and kids even actually eating the food and stuff like this. But you can see it in a lot of kids' cognitive ability, how well nourished they are, or not. It's like, even that. So veganism is also a growing thing, and like, no shade here, and it isn't like, I'm not saying if you are vegan this is absolutely going to happen to your children, but from what I have seen, the vegan children that I've known in the secondary school environments are shorter, thinner, and have massive amounts of anxiety, huge amounts of anxiety. So we know that not only does nutrition have an effect on your cognitive ability and your academic ability, but it also has a massive impact on mood. So
why is that, Emily? Why what is this link between food and mood then?
Okay, so it's the simplest thing, and it baffles me why this isn't kind of like screamed about more, but the body essentially has two states: fed state and starvation state. So in fed state, rest and digest, things can tick across. Starvation state is conserve and reserve, hold on to your reserves, stop digesting, start moving. It's the fight or flight response, basically, and your body is in balance, putting the brakes on, putting the acceleration on, in order to come to a state of homeostasis, like equilibrium.
Because I
So
was reading about homeostasis the other day. Effectively, your body has this like negative feedback loop where you have like you basically have like a sensor like that will basically be like, oh, this is, you know, your blood pressure is too high. Then it will send a message to the effectors that then will lower that. But then that keeps happening until another sensor sends a message to turn it off. Like, it's, if anything, there's no gray area between like, fight or flight and rest and digest. It's one or the other. Do you know what I mean? There's I mean, we're constantly fighting for this balance, which is the definition of homeostasis. This is so interesting you're talking about this, because I was reading about this the other day, and it's this idea that that it's on unless it's off. Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of clear cut with the body. It's amazing.
and this is why we are in constant feedback, and our environment is literally information for what isn't happening inside our bodies. And so hunger is stress. So when you are hungry, when your blood sugar drops, when you haven't got the reserves there, cortisol spikes, and the cortisol spikes communicates with your thyroid, slows your thyroid function down. So the pituitary gland in the brain is the I can't remember what you called it. It's like, that's the sensor. So that's receiving the signals from the wider environment, from you. If I touch that, that's hot. Ow. Pituitary gland then signals to my body to move my hand away because that's hot and it's going to burn if it stays there. So so the pituitary gland feeds to the thyroid gland, and then the thyroid gland sends out hormones which have actions on like every other gland in the body in order to adjust metabolism to suit what is happening in that environment. So if I'm hungry, if there's less food, my thyroid gland secretes less hormones are then secreted to the rest of my glands, and things like sex hormones start barely being produced. This is because the female body, in our case, because we produce children, we can only produce children if we have enough energy in order to do so. If we haven't got enough energy to do so, our body will cut off our reproductive ability in order to conserve energy and to conserve life. It's all survival. So this is why stress and hunger and restriction or depletion has such an effect on women's fertility and women's quality of their periods. So one of the biggest causes of periods pain is not having enough protein in the diet. And that's just across the system. If you're not giving your body enough protein in order for your tissues to regenerate, the tissues become rigid and they become painful, they become inflamed and painful, and that's why we do experience so much problems with period pain and migraines and all of these debilitating symptoms, endometriosis, PCOS, infertility, all of it. So this is why it has, and this is why, again, I think I came to my womb because I knew that my womb was the key to me nourishing myself properly. She was the thing that made me start listening to my body, to my physiology. And I wasn't before, I'd gone down the vegan route, all this information was being pushed forward at the time. Obviously, physiology and biochemistry, it was harder to kind of like read between the lines of what we actually needed. But when someone's presenting to you, more fiber is better for you and red meat causes colon cancer, that's kind of, it's so easy. You just accept that as truth, and the entire, so I did it originally. It wasn't because I was a meat eater. I felt okay about eating meat. Obviously, I didn't like the industrial farming setting. I think it's abhorrent. I think it's not good for animal or for our food source. So I was and I had a lot of gut issues as well. But again, I just stepped out of like being on the pill on and off, and we know that the pill in estrogen has an impact on the gut and how the gut is able to, so that too much estrogen can cause symptoms of IBS. I was also coming out of a heavy party lifestyle, so drugs and alcohol, and we know how that impacts the liver and the digestive system. And I went vegan in order to try and heal myself, and not ever did any of my symptoms improve. My menstrual symptoms got way worse. My gut issues never improved and actually kind of just perpetuated, really.
Oh my
And
God, your dog is so cute. Sorry, your dog has just like stolen the. I'm not even paying attention to what you're talking about anymore. What a sleek little seal of a dog is that?
this is my this is Winston. He follows me everywhere. He's a lovely boy.
Winston. What are you, okay, Winston, stop derailing. You're like my dog. Stop derailing what I'm trying to do, Winston. Yes,
Um,
so you were just saying.
so yeah, so I then came back into my connection with my womb, and this was through I was doing some workshops at the time, but this was through meditation and through like communication, saying I'm here, speak to me. You know, what do you want me to know? What is it I
Well,
need to do?
I truly believe it. This is effectively this idea of this disconnection from the womb space and from our own, because obviously I know that the physiological sort of point of having a womb is so that we can reproduce. But I think it's more than that. I think the womb is the only organ in all of the organs, in all of the mammals, where basically you accept this foreign body in the shape of a sperm cell is sort of is welcomed into the organ, and then it's sealed off for 9 months, and then this incredible caterpillar chrysalis butterfly thing happens, and then it's capable of then expelling a sort of not a direct clone of you but a pretty fucking similar copy. Like, I think it's just absolute magic. And I think a lot of the sort of like the medical industrial process complex is about separating us from our bodies in a way where you feel like I think it's people do it as well with things like mental like mood disorders. Like people say like, oh well, that's just my anxiety, and I'm like, no, you are in that. That is you and the same thing. It's not like you and your anxiety, this separation of you and your womb. You are the same thing, and everything that goes on in your body then has this. It's felt by your womb. Do you know what I mean? Like you are one and the same thing. And it's just absolutely incredible. Like I'm so hungry for knowledge. I'm just aware that we're kind of running out of time. I just wanted to ask you that about the little device on your chest. Is that a Healy?
Healing, yes, it is. Yeah.
So
So
I've seen those. I've read about those. They emit like frequencies basically.
so it emits electronic frequencies. Oh, right. I think we're going to have to stop here, Phoebe, and start on a new one.
Okay, yeah.
Cameron's just got a lot to unpick about what you said. I think I need to go into frequency and connection and intent and the frequency that creates. But then there was also a bit about I wanted to finish off the starvation anxiety
Yeah.
thread.
Well,
Okay, so
do you want to have like 10 minutes sabbatical, and I'll rejoin I'll start a new one in 10 minutes, because then you can do like a boyfriend experience.
no, he's fine. He'll go upstairs. No, let's go. I need to keep this train going.
Okay, right. I'm just going to close this down and I'll send you another one, okay?
Right. Okay.